I'm really honored to speak with you here today. My family, we have a long history with Cafe, and I feel a little bit embarrassed that we haven't been more involved with Cafe for a number of years, but we also belong to another organization of family businesses called Selected Independent Funeral Homes, and it's an international organization for funeral service businesses, and they are all family-owned and operated businesses. And so I have spent a little bit more of my time with that organization. But I do love our family business. I love Cafe, and it's here in one of these Cafe meetings that I learned some significant lessons, some of them that I'm going to share with you today, on some things that have helped me with our business. I need to, funeral service is a tricky topic to talk about, and I have to kind of explain to you that because I'm in funeral service, it doesn't mean that I'm immune to the fact that people in my life pass away. And I have a first cousin that passed away here a week ago, and her funeral is actually this morning. And so I need to apologize for you, but after my presentation this morning, I'm going to sneak away so that I can be present at her service. So I just apologize to that for you up front. But a little bit about our business. I need to, in order to talk a little bit about my topic, which is family succession planning, you need to know a little bit about business. And of course, we are locally owned and operated here, and it is a family business. Our main location is in East Calgary, right on 17th Avenue, otherwise known as International Avenue, or you'd know it as Forest Lawn. I want to just share with you that talking about death won't make anybody suddenly die here, so I just want to reassure you about that. Nor will it prevent anybody from dying either. And I like to think about it a little bit as talking about sex won't actually create any pregnancies here, nor will avoid talking about sex prevent any pregnancies. So, but in terms of funeral service, it is a very difficult time for families. I mean, it's been difficult for my cousin's family to deal with her funeral that's coming up this morning. There's grief, there's sadness, there's logistical things you have to work out, there's financial considerations, there's a lot of remembering and reflecting on life that goes on. And of course, there's always this important need to honor the life of the person that's passed away. And so my job is to kind of oversee all of those. And there's a funeral director who's become quite an excellent writer, and he's been quoted significantly. His name is Thomas Lynch, and this is his quote. Our job is to get the dead body where it needs to go, and to get the living where they need to be. And that really sums up my work. And funeral service businesses are interesting because they're, I mean, I don't know, 6 Feet Under is a show that you've probably all heard about, and there are other family businesses out there that are funeral homes, and I think sometimes the fact that we're talking about death makes people a little bit interested in it. But funeral service businesses are oftentimes very long and have a lot of stability. There's a lot of synergies in these businesses. And I can tell you that in this organization that I belong to, that I participate in significantly, that there are some amazing funeral home businesses that have survived for a long time. The Schedinger family in Columbus, Ohio, they've got a significant business. They have 12 different chapels. They have 2 cemeteries. They have an entire pet funeral division that they operate. And they've been in business for 130 years, the same family. I have a good friend by the name of Will Pumphrey in Bethesda, Maryland. Their family business, Pumphrey Funeral Home, is the oldest continuous business in their county, and this is in Washington, D.C. area here. It's over 150 years old. And the thing about their business is, I was there here a few years ago, and they have all of the previous Pumphreys photos in this hallway, and you can go down and see Mr. Pumphrey number 1 and Mr. Pumphrey number 2, and then there's Will, and then there's Bill, and then there's Will, and then there's Bill. And my friend looks like all of them. And it's really, and it's fascinating that they've been able to maintain that. Here in Canada, Spears Funeral Home in Regina, with the pride their family business, over 100 years they've been in business. Saskatoon Funeral Home in Saskatoon, the Edwards family, they were the Cafe Business of the Year here 2 years ago. A fantastic business. And but not all funeral homes are family operations. The corporations have come, and there are many funeral homes, even in Calgary. Several of the funeral homes here are much larger corporations. So a little bit about our business. We started our business in 1983, so we have a 30-year history as opposed to Sheddingers who are 100 years older, or some of these other ones. In our fiscal year of last year, we had 778 deaths that we handled here in Calgary. And this includes a wide variety of work. There's a number of families that call Piersons where we will deal with the families directly, but they're not our only clients. The University of Calgary is one of our clients. We look after all the cremations for the Department of Anatomy. We have clients where we do the cremations for them. The funeral home in Vulcan, the funeral home in Canmore, the funeral home in Strathmore. We do work for the funeral homes in Medicine Hat. And we actually do a significant amount of shipping all over Canada, in fact, all over the world. Our core business, of course, you can see is everything that would be related to funeral service that you could possibly imagine. And it can be extremely challenging. There are a lot of religious diversity that we have to contend with, and a lot of cultural diversity that we get to experience. And actually we feel honored to be able to find ways of solving problems within those communities and assisting those families at those times. As a business, we have revenues of $2.7 million. We have roughly 25 full and part-time staff. And I'm just going to skip ahead here for a bit. One of my first experiences in cafe, one of the things that comes to my mind and solidified in my brain a number of years ago was at a cafe meeting, and it was this diagram right here. And I can't remember who shared this with me. I didn't learn it in a business class, but they talked about family businesses having these 3 circles. We have ownership here, the family over here, and the business operations and how things function over here. And as I have tried to think about my own business, always separating these out into this diagram has always helped me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those circles for a moment. And in terms of the Pierson family, there's my parents and there are 7 children. I'm number 5 of those 7. And growing up, our family did not have the business. And we were very much like Larry, kind of didn't have any money, but didn't really know it, that we were poor, but we were. This family has kind of exploded in growth. All of my brothers and sisters are married, and together there are 37 grandchildren in that next generation. And in the generation below that, I didn't bother trying to count when I was putting this together, but there's a number of them there. And of course, we have aunts and uncles and cousins. So that's the Pierson family. I just have to explain here, when it comes to the 37 grandchildren, I have one sister who had 6 children, was married and had 6 children, and that ended in divorce. And she remarried her high school sweetheart, whose wife had passed away. And he had 6 children as well, so that gave them 12. And that is a significant number of that one particular number there. In terms of the ownership of Piersons, we have my parents who are still living. They're both in their 80s now. And one of the things that I've learned is that ownership is obviously probably the most important part of what you can pay attention to in your business, especially for succession planning. And my parents were extremely wise when they structured the company, and over the years they've been able to maintain the control of the business, and so all of the shares that lead into the control without necessarily maintaining all of the financial assets of the business. And some of that, a significant amount of that, has then percolated down to the next generation. Now we have, there are 7 siblings, and you'll notice here that there are only 6 owners of the business. Currently, 6 children that have any share ownership of it. And I do have my oldest brother who chose a number of years ago in a family conflict to leave the business. And so that is now part of our family dynamics, is that one of the 7 children is not an owner. Even though there are all of those grandchildren out there and great-grandchildren, none of them are owners of the business. And it's important to make those distinctions in this. So the business as it functions, who's there? And my parents are still, they're retired, so they are not involved in the day-to-day operations. But they do take a keen interest in what's going on day-to-day. Myself, I'm the president of the company. I have a sister, an older sister, who oversees our floral division, and she would be the secretary-treasurer. Her son, my nephew, is our general manager, and so he would be one of the 2 grandchildren, and then I also have a niece who's involved. And they really, in succession planning, are the next generation who are coming forward. And I'll mention to you there, you can see that I also have a son-in-law to my parents. Mervyn Orr is our accountant, and although my sister, his wife, does not have anything to do with the operations of the business, he's been an important part of the family, an important part of our corporate structure. And I have one of my five sisters, Alice, is a funeral director in Denver, Colorado. So even though she's an owner and doesn't have any active participation in it, she still takes a keen interest in how we're doing. I showed you this before, and I'll just take this a step further. In our business, in terms of setting this up, you can see that for ownership, we've gone ahead and done something where, and I'll take this to the next step. One of the challenges that we've found in our own particular situation, there were 3, and I'll call them challenges. I won't call them problems, but maybe that might be a more honest way to talk about them, the challenges were having a clear and common direction that we would all go together, both as a business and as owners. Communication seemed to be a challenge for us as well, and then actually implementing and making changes and going forward was a challenge. And how can you do that when you don't even have a clear or common goal? So separating these out helped a lot. And you can see, so we taking this a step back, we went ahead and looked at each of these parts of our business and kind of sorted out how these things should function and use models from the general corporate world. So of course, when it comes to ownership, we established a board of directors and regular meetings so that the communication can happen there. And then with the management, the funeral home, the business itself is structured quite clearly with a clear set of who's responsible for who and where does the accountability fall in there. And then, of course, the family. You have to remember that I'm number 5 of 7 kids. So really, in that particular circle, I kind of fall down the pecking order there, which is fine. I'm happy to not be at the top there. So in looking at our 3 particular challenges, I wanted to talk about them first of all. When it comes to a common direction, that really is a shareholder or an ownership issue. And it's the ownership that's going to drive the direction of the company. Now, you may have different goals for your family, and that's the family council will look after that. But in this particular slide, I'm talking about the business and the owners being together on this one. And in our family, having some visioning sessions, doing the sharing and the listening, the talking, the challenging each other. What do we want to do? How do we want to make things go? The feedback. This really becomes a big loop in going around and sorting out where things would be. And ultimately, you do need to have some goals here. And so creating the common direction is going to end with having common goals. The next thing is communication. And this is absolutely key in any organization. And not only do we need to have communication at the ownership level with the shareholders, but we also need to have ownership or communication within the business level as well. And that's where you have your staff meetings, you do your training, you keep people accountable to what they're doing. And of course, the family meetings are going to be separate. So once again, I think it's critical for communication in all of this. And you all know this. This is nothing new that I'm sharing. And of course, when it comes to the implementation, there's really got to be accountability at each level. And so when it comes to being accountable at the organizational level, at the ownership level, our board meetings, that accountability, I'm held to account to the owners of the company. And for the business, I'm once again the president, and I have to keep everybody on our staff accountable to what they're doing. And the family, of course, that's a separate topic as well. Now, one of my big personal goals, and I have a lot of goals for our business, but one of the personal goals that I have is to one day, as a ghost perhaps, return to our family business and see my picture on a wall there with other portraits. And as I go up and down those hallways. And so succession planning really is important to me. I want to make sure that our family, I would like to see this as a successful family business over the generations. My kids are still young to participate, and I have no idea how that's going to work out. I'm not going to put any pressure on them. But this is what I'm doing with our diagram here. It's important to now take these individual family members and see how they might fit into the organization. And over the years, I can say a number of my nieces and nephews, all of whom I love, they're all wonderful individuals. A number of them have spent some time in the operations of our business to some degree or another, whether it's working in the garden, washing cars, assisting at some level. They could do that, even helping out in the flower shop deliveries. I'm really excited that I have a nephew whom I love, who's just become a great friend, who not only has been able to help us out in the operations, but I've been able to assist him, and he's now our general manager, which allows me to kind of spend some of my time doing some of the things I need to. And so it's great that he's been able to participate in that. And I have a niece as well on the flower shop side of our business who's making some steps forward toward that. None of them have moved from into this shareholder category there, but I know that they all have aspirations to. No bank would lend them the money to actually buy a part of the business right now, and I know that. So we are now at the stages of trying to sort out how can we actually bridge that gap and create an opportunity for some of these individual family members to move into this category here. And our unanimous shareholders agreement, which has been extremely valuable to us as a family since our inception 30 years ago, really doesn't address a third generation. So we're actually in the midst of looking at that, analyzing it, and creating a new unanimous shareholders agreement that will really plan for the inclusion and the successful succession of our business. About 3 years ago, I had one of my friends in funeral service. There's another family business, the McCaw family in Lloydminster, another fabulous family whom I love. They're also part of Selected Independent Funeral Homes. And they have two sons. They're contemporaries of mine. And one of them I worked in the Alberta Funeral Service Association with a long time, and I would see these friends at conferences regularly, and we became very close. And there was a particular Saturday or a particular day 3 years ago where Dale came down to Calgary to for some business that we had helped him with, and then to return to Lloydminster. And so I had about half an hour conversation with him and his son while they were at our business. And the next day he was tragically killed by a drunk driver. It was very hard for me because he was such a good friend. And I'm so relieved that they had their business set up in a way that they have successfully succeeded in transferring that business to the other family members that it needed to. And his son is now an active participant and is in the stages of becoming an owner. And I'm really excited that they were prepared. Succession of any business will happen. As a funeral director, I can attest to that. Whether you plan for it or not, those circles are not static. Shareholders will change, family members, this will get bigger or smaller. As my cousins, as I go to that funeral, I know that we are losing one in my family today. And the operations, those things will always change. But of course, it's my call out to each of you as family businesses to give this some thought and to contemplate succession planning in your own business. And so thank you very much for having me here today and giving me an opportunity to speak to you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.